Hello and welcome to another edition of GateDrop.com podcast. Andy McKinstry joins me again, and we're going to look back, Andy, at the first three rounds of AMS Supercross, plus some British Arenacross chat, which has been a pretty phenomenal opening four rounds of that series. We'll talk about that a bit later on. But let's start with Supercross and Eli Tomac. First round at Anaheim was pretty phenomenal. He looked like he was running away with it, had that crash, came back, still took the win. And at that point, you're thinking it's Eli Tomac's to lose. 2 weeks later, round two, Eli Tomac wins again. And you're really starting to think who's going to beat him, although Cooper Webb gave himself and maybe everyone else a little bit of hope by reeling him in slightly at the end of that second race. But the Triple Crown came, and Eli Tomac threw it away big time in the third race, trying to pass Cooper Webb of all people. I think there was the four of them, or not Webb actually, but Sexton, Roxon, Tomac, and maybe Anderson were all going for the overall win. It was pretty intense. The Triple Crown certainly brings a lot of drama, and I think I'd like to see more of those races because each race all had its own story. And it all ended with Eli Tomac going down hard. That opened the door. Chase Sexton took the win. Cooper Webb, very happy with his performance, held Tomac off for that time and kind of maybe you could say forced the mistake. Ken Roxon on the podium with the Suzuki. He's only 11 points, I think, back off Eli Tomac. He still has the red plate, but Cooper Webb, Chase Sexton 4 points behind. This championship's wide open now.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it's been some very good racing during the opening three rounds, especially the first round and the triple format there, which were all at Anaheim. Really, really good racing. I think the first round with the weather conditions made for a very rough track for Supercross. I think that really helped, and because everyone was so hyped up, it led to quite a lot of crashes and things too, and maybe some of those things you wouldn't get when everyone calms down a bit later in the season. Second one, pretty okay racing, but yeah, like you said, the Triple Crown loads. It was very dramatic, and even the 250 class, which I'm sure we'll probably touch on later, it was very dramatic as well. So far, I think if you're analysing the championship, I think realistically probably four riders and then maybe a wild card after that. I think when it comes down to the championship, you're probably looking at Eli Tomac, who I still think is probably the quickest in raw speed, but for a change, his starts weren't good in the triple format, which means he needed to pass his way through the field, and then he made the mistake, which can always happen when you're pushing to try and pass riders, and especially Cooper Webb. And then you've got Chase Sexton, who actually won the triple header, so very, very good night for him in the Honda. Obviously he went head to head with Eli Tomac in the AMA Nationals. Hasn't really battled for a Supercross title yet, so he'll be hoping to challenge for that. And then you've got Cooper Webb, who hasn't won yet, but very, very consistent. And he was probably the one coming into the season we weren't totally sure about after the KTM issues last year. But bike looks a lot better. He looks a lot better. And even if he doesn't get a good start, he's able to come through the pack. And then you've got Jason Anderson on any day can win, but seems to sort of always get caught up in drama too. So whether he can stay out of that drama and mount the championship threat remains to be seen. And then the wild card we'll probably have is Ken Roxon. Obviously on the Suzuki, got the Suzuki back up on the podium, which is great to see at Anaheim too. And so far this season he's been very consistent. But I think the most pleasing thing is his fitness looks great and he isn't getting tired at the end of motos, which obviously has been a hindrance during his last few years after the big injuries he's had. So even though during his HRC days there has been glimpses of him showing this, so I think for him now he just needs to continue this. Whether or not he can win races and win enough races to challenge for the title does remain to be seen, but I still think it's very, very positive start to the season for Ken Roxon.
And that one mistake for Eli's really opened the door, not just in terms of he can be beat, but I think in terms of Chase Sexton, that's only his second Supercross win. But obviously he was coming in from the Nationals believing he had a title threat, and he's been okay in the first couple of rounds. We all know what happened to him with Justin Barcia at round two, but now he's got that win. I think Webb at round two, even though Tomac beat him, the fact he closed in on Tomac at the end really solidified his belief that he could be a title contender. And that's only going to improve after round three. Roxon was saying with the Suzuki, he's getting closer. You'd imagine he's only going to get better from here. Confidence with the podium, and even Jason Anderson's only 14 points off, and he's had, for his level, probably two not very good rounds in the first two rounds, and all of a sudden the championship is a bit closer than it was looking after round two. Even Dylan Ferrandis is sixth there, just a couple of points back. So all the big guns now have a wee bit more hope. And for Eli Tomac, you don't want to give Chase Sexton that confidence again. You don't want to give Cooper Webb hope, especially Cooper Webb. You know what he's like when he gets his teeth into something and really believes he can win it. And I think he's starting to have that belief. He's getting confidence in the bike. That Red Bull KTM, he's looked good in 3 rounds, 3 totally different tracks. And for Eli Tomac, the dominator really of all the first 2 events, and he was looking like he could win the third, or at least the overall from the third main. He was in perfect position. He'd cut Ken Roxon off out of the gate in that third final, and then suddenly, here we go. He's on the ground. Lucky not to be hurt, really. He landed pretty good on a tough block, but Tomac sixth overall, door wide open, and now all these that top 6 are all going to think that they can win the championship, and it's almost a slight reset for round 4. It's almost like round 1 again, where everybody's got that belief Tomac maybe isn't unbeatable, and it's up to them now to really put the pressure on Eli. But you have to think Eli's probably still the favourite. However, it's his first real challenge coming into this 2023 season, round 4. How does he respond?
Yeah, well, I certainly don't think he'll be panicking yet. I mean, in his head, he probably thinks he's the quickest rider there, and
Probably.
and mentally that's a good place to be. He'll just not want to be getting starts at God again. It's actually been a long time since the starts have been so bad, because that's one thing since he's got on the Yamaha that's improved the most, probably getting out of the gate. So I think he'll just be wanting to get better starts, put himself in better situations, so he doesn't need to pass those guys. And you know, we all know what speed he has, so he doesn't need to prove anything there. I still think he's certainly the favourite. And even though I gave you 5 names earlier, I think if it's going to come down to anyone that can challenge him, probably is going to be Cooper Webb, just because he's got that grit and determination,
Yeah.
and the fact he hasn't won yet either, and he's still pretty close in the championship. So I think Webb probably just needs to win as soon as possible, and maybe he's the one that if he can win one, it could be a domino effect. I'm not sure if the rest will be able to run Eli Tomac speed every single week and win enough races to challenge for this championship. So yeah, it'll certainly be interesting. But I mean, Eli doesn't typically start the season that well anyway. I mean, he doesn't usually win A1 to start with, so he won that, and that was already, he can tick that off his to-do list in his career now. He might not even make another A1 if he hangs the boots up at the end of the season. So, I mean, all in all, it's still been a positive start to the season for Eli, and I think he'll be happy with the speed he has. Just like I say, he won't want those starts every week. If he gets those starts every week, then it could get interesting, especially if everyone stays fit, because certainly the top 5 or 6 are very, very fast.
Yeah, and I think Webb, as you mentioned there, he has to win a race, you would imagine, pretty soon. And the next round's probably the round to do it, because Tomac's maybe rocking slightly, at least in terms of the points. Cooper Webb's getting stronger and stronger, and he's always very good at when he senses weakness or when he senses his opportunity, let's say. That's when he can usually deliver. And I think he's probably sensing that right now it's time to deliver and really put the pressure on Tomac. Sexton's going to be confident again. But it's looking, you've probably the top 6 in the championship, or the fastest top 6. And generally, they're sort of starting to get the starts. We've seen that all together. We've seen Adam Cianciarulo get the starts. His fitness isn't quite there yet, but he'll probably come along later in the season, getting better and better. But that top 6 are really starting to separate themselves, I think. And they're all probably still believing have a shot at this championship. So I think round 4 is going to be one of the most interesting rounds. And of course, we have East Coast starting next week as well. So Tom Vial starting there. And of course, Mitch Payton, he's had to hire Chris Blose in because both of his riders, Hammaker, injured, and then Joe Schmoda injured the day after. So that's a pretty nightmare scenario. I think there's a Husky guy, Jake Swole injured as well. So for the teams, it's a pretty brutal start to the East Coast series. But we have British rider Max Anstey's going to be good, I think, after his World Supercross exploits. We have Tom Vial's going to be very interesting, but I think the favourite has got to be Hunter Lawrence. I've just seen what Jet's done, and Hunter's been seeing his pace, and Jet's been the dominator.
Yeah, well, just to touch on what you said about the top 6 in the 450 class, I think you're right. The only thing I would say is one rider that hasn't really got a good start is Dylan Ferrandis, something that's hindered him throughout his career. Very frustrating, because every single moto he's had to come through the pack and he's been able to do it, but just on a few occasions he's maybe got into fifth or sixth, and then the rest have been gone, and he hasn't been able to catch them up. So I think if he can get a good start and see that what pace they're running the first couple of laps, he's certainly good enough to run with them. But it's looking like he's going to struggle to get good starts consistently, which is a shame because he has the pace to run up there. If you
Well,
give him
he was
six
ahead of
rounds,
rocks in there that last moto, and he couldn't sort of
I
go with
will.
them. I think he's lacking a bit of intensity at the start of these races too, even if he's but as you say, he's never really getting away in the top three. He's maybe getting away fifth, sixth, sort of at the back of all the good guys. But yeah, he could be another one that's ready to strike if he can get that wee bit, that extra probably 2% that he needs to really go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And that one moto, he did get the best start. Ironically, that was probably the one moto he rode the worst out of them all. And anybody can have a moto like that where you're just not on it 100%. So yeah, it'd be good for him to get his starts. But it looks like that's just a weak link for Dylan. He's not going to be able to get them consistently, which is a shame because if he says he wants to win a Supercross. Well, it's just reality. Since he's got on the 450, he can't get a good start consistently. So that's what he needs to do if he wants to win one of these titles, which he dreams of doing. Fingers crossed he can do it because he's certainly got the pace. So yeah, going to the next round, it'll definitely be interesting. And yeah, looking at the 250 class, yeah, I mean, if Hunter Lawrence can just keep cool, keep steady Eddie, and blast out the motos and not do anything stupid, he's certainly the favorite for this title. On paper, he had a good championship last year, obviously going against somebody very experienced in Christian Craig and at times being his pace. So I think he'll have the pace. It's just a matter of keeping out of trouble and getting good starts. And I think he'll be very hard to beat. And already he doesn't need to worry about Joe Shimoda. So that's one guy I won't need to worry about in the championship. Although I do think Shimoda and Hammaker, maybe it is, they'll be back after a few rounds potentially.
Yeah, they'll be in the races, but maybe not a title.
I know. Yeah, exactly. So.
Title threat. We should mention as well, Levi Kitchen. Consistency got him the overall win, and I think he's going to get stronger and stronger this season. He had a bit of bad luck the first two rounds. He got wiped out on the start at round 2. But for me, RJ Hampshire really let things go unnecessarily. On Saturday night there, he had the win in the first one. Jet made a rare mistake, gave RJ the win, and he really needs to put the pressure on Jet, try to get this championship going after 2 second places. He had the opportunity. Jet goes down or gets knocked down in the second final. Hampshire didn't get the greatest start either. He was ahead of Jet, though. He just needed to stay calm, and then his hand comes off the bar. It's a massive crash. DNFs that race. And ironically, of all things to happen, Cameron McAdoo, who got busted up pretty bad in practice in that whoop crash, he ended up 6th overall somehow. Pretty tough to be able to ride with that, with the state of his arm all swollen, his elbow. He ended up now going to 2nd in points ahead of RJ Hampshire. And after the first set of races, you would think it'd be RJ Hampshire maybe having a shot to close in on Jet Lawrence. But as usual, a bad night for Jet Lawrence relative to what he usually does. And this was the night where he really extended his points lead. So again, Jet Lawrence in control, but it was nice to see Levi Kitchen, another young rider, winning his first Supercross, and Star Yamaha weren't looking too good in the first 2 rounds, but they've still got a Supercross win this year.
Yeah, exactly. It's there was quite a lot of chaos in that 250 class, not triple header, and I don't think we're going to see that every week, obviously. So it's a bit of a weird one. I'd usually agree with you with RJ Hampshire, but it was one of those weeks. A lot of stuff happened, a lot of riders. So yeah, it's just unfortunate, really. And I think he was probably riding pain off that crash as well, so that certainly didn't help matter. So it's funny. It's just funny the weekend that Jet makes his mistakes. He ends up taking a better points lead. So not good when you're looking to challenge him for the championship. He's going to be very, very hard to beat now, barring an injury. So hopefully he can stay in and win another Supercross title. And yeah, Levi Kitchen, consistency maybe a bit of an issue throughout his career so far, but he'll be looking to put that right and to get his first win. Very, very positive, and I'm sure Star Yamaha will also be happy with Robertson as well, who had a good weekend, so they'll be looking at more of that. Whether or not they can do it on a consistent basis does remain to be seen.
And had Hayden Deegan riding in the Supercross Futures, his teammate actually won, but his dad, Brian Deegan, said there may be a chance he might actually ride all the East Coast rounds. We'll wait and see. I know he crashed there on Saturday night in the main show, but we'll see what happens there. Certainly pace-wise, he looks like he's good enough for at least top 10 anyway on the lap times. Racing's a different story, but we'll see how many rounds Hayden does, and maybe he'll even do them all. So still a bit of jeopardy in the East Coast. I think it's quite good. It was come a little early. Usually it's a couple of rounds later, but it'll just be interesting to see who's where and who's really got the lead. And obviously with Tom Vial making his debut, so I think there'll be a lot of eyes on him. But I'm not quite sure what to expect from him. You're probably looking in around top 5, 6 at least anyway. If first of all qualify, I guess, through the heat safely, and then he's usually a pretty good starter. We're not sure how his whip speed is, but he looks to have the rest of the track pretty comfortable. But again, racing with the lights on under the pressure, brand new experience. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it was going to be a full field without any injuries, I mean, if he got 10th as a first, without 10th at the first race would have been good. But, you know, there's 3 guys there he doesn't need to worry about already. So that already pushes him up maybe to 7th, somewhere like that. So if he can just get a top 7 or 8 first race, just learn from it and just build from there and don't end up injured like some of your rivals. And I think it'll be a good season if he can just come away injury free and learn and learn and learn. And if he can, I'm sure we'll get to see him in the top 5 and maybe even the podium before the end of the season, because we all know he has talent and we all know he's a very, very quick learner as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll certainly be interesting to see how he gets on as the season adapts. But I just think it's important to get the first one over and done with, really, and not not have too much pressure on his shoulders, worrying about where he's going to finish.
And Max Anstey, they see him as a title contender. I think if he doesn't make mistakes, he shouldn't be too far away. Certainly going for that top 3 in the championship for me.
I don't know about a championship contender when you've got Hunter Lawrence riding, but yeah, top 5 I think would be realistic. Yeah, and then if the injuries happen, as we know, so who knows what can happen. But Max, throughout his career himself, has been in quite a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
So again, he'll be looking to stay injury free and have a good season. And it'll be good to see him in the 250 class. I think this is his first since going back to America. This is his first 250 Supercross championship title. So it'll be nice to see him back on a wee bike.
Yeah, I think that World Supercross will really help him because he's got the experience. The team have got experience working with him, and everyone knows he's fast, and he knows he's fast now. So Vial and Anstey, I think, will be the 2 of the biggest eye-catching riders this weekend, as well as Hunter Lawrence. He's coming in with pressure. Can he deal with the pressure the way Jet has and just deliver win after win? We'll soon find out. But that's the American Series, Supercross Series look back. Let's move on to British Arenacross. So there's been 4 action-packed rounds. We were in Belfast. That started off with a pretty brutal crash with Joe Clayton and Jack Brunel. For anyone that's seen that, Clayton basically got landed on by Brunel when their lines came together in midair. Both went down pretty hard. Brunel coughing up blood in the pits. He went to hospital. He missed that round and then came back with a cracked rib and got on the podium the next night, while Joe Clayton was he made the final on the Friday, and then he was sore on the Saturday and didn't. I think he had a couple of crashes and bad starts, didn't make the final, but both were back in the final, and Brunel again on the podium in Aberdeen. So straight away you were welcome to Arenacross in the first heat race, and from there it was the Tommy Searle Conrad Muse show, four rounds in a row basically, and it all came to a head round 4 there in Aberdeen. The Searle won the first night in Belfast. Muse won the second night. Searle won the first night in Aberdeen. And Muse he started to claw his way up to the back wheel of Searle on night 2. Went for the pass. And I think Conrad was right in his assessment of it. He did go down to the inside. He did kind of take Searle's line, but I think he was nice about it in terms of he gave Searle an option. But Searle chose the option to try to go around the outside. And then that was Muse was still sort of committed to his line, and they both connected and went down. Worked out well for Muse. He took second. Josh Gilbert took his first win, and he now leads the title championship over Searle. But the level those 2 were at, we saw in Belfast, I think they lapped up to near 5th or 6th on the second night. The level those 2 are at's pretty impressive, especially Muse never really raced any sort of indoor racing before. And you get the feeling that this is going to be a battle not just for this Arenacross Championship, but for the British Motocross Championship as well. There might be a few more guys added in, of course. It's a pretty stacked field, but Conrad Muse taken to the 450 Honda like a duck to water, and Tommy Searle looks really at home in the Kawasaki. That's the story of British Arenacross so far. It's been pretty spectacular racing.
Yeah, very, very good racing. And I have to say, Belfast most certainly was the Conrad Muse and the Tommy Searle show. They were on fire, and I mean, you said they lapped up the fifth or sixth, but if there had been blue flags and riders hadn't moved out of the way they weren't
Yeah.
supposed to, they probably would have lapped the whole field, apart from maybe Burnell the second night. Aberdeen, it was actually nice to see Jack not being that far away. I think fitness, just, Conor Amuse and Tommy
Mhm.
Searle obviously work very hard, and fitness, they have the fitness. Jack, works. He's not full time, and it's not his job, so they had the edge at the end of the races, but it was just nice to see Jack hang in there in the first main event, and then the second main event was just absolute chaos. It was fantastic racing. For
Yeah,
anybody
it was
that hasn't seen it,
unbelievable.
I'd
Yeah, go
actually
watch
recommend you.
on
Yeah, I mean,
YouTube.
A2 was good, but this final main event was bonkers, and it worked out very, very well for Josh Gilbert, who just about held on from, I think, was it Banks Brown or the Muse got back into second? I
He's
can't
got
even
back in the
remember now.
second, barely. Yeah,
Yeah, but
it was
yeah, but
carnage.
if I mean, yeah, another lap, and I mean, there was five in a row, like another lap
Yeah, there
served,
was a
maybe if
tail.
made a few moves, and so it was really, really good racing. And yeah, like you say, I think those two could be battling all season together, really, whether it's indoor or outdoors. But brilliant, brilliant racing.
And the show itself is pretty good. We're not the biggest fans of freestyle, so that's probably a bit long for our liking. But the head-to-head races are also pretty unmissable. So Jason Mera take out, was it Luke Burton, I think, in Belfast, just pretty much rammed him. We had Gilbert versus Booker, a pretty amazing final on the
Brilliant.
Friday night
Yeah.
where Booker went to slam Gilbert in the penultimate corner, then Gilbert near went over the bars, got into the final corner, and still managed to pass Booker for the win. And then it was last night. There's been that many? It's been mad. Mel Pocock sort of just like he was playing a
Mm,
PlayStation game. He took
mm.
a guy out to get to the final, and then he took who even was in the final. He went down as well, pretty
Bayless, I
hard
think.
off
Mm.
Bayless in the sort of mid-air collision. So that was pretty flamboyant action before we even got to the main final and the LCQ, which is pretty tense. And they only let one in, and it's usually pretty good field going into that. So again, maybe they should let two in there and not have the fan vote. But we'll see what develops with that. But every race there's something on it because the top guys want to get the inside gate pick because the inside gate pick is so important. So from qualifying, they're going for that. The heat races, if you're Sterling Muse, you're almost desperate to win your side of the class, or even if they're in the same one like they were this weekend last night. Everyone wants that inside gate because it's so important to get the start. So every race there's something on it. The other guys are just trying to get their scores in to qualify because they know that LCQ and that head to head can be carnage. So the racing side of it, which we're more interested in, is pretty intense. And speaking to some of the riders, I think they find it intense on the heart rate too. There's not much rest either. So it's interesting to see that comparison from indoor arena cross that most of those guys aren't really used to compared to motocross.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, we've obviously had 2 rounds in Belfast and 2 rounds in Aberdeen now, and even though it's arena cross, you sort of expect the tracks to be fairly similar. The tracks actually weren't similar at all; they were
No,
very
totally
different
different.
for
Yeah,
arena cross. So it was actually really good. Belfast, I think, it provided better racing for the head-to-heads because there was more
yeah,
tighter corners and more opportunity to take somebody out. Whereas Aberdeen was maybe more of a better racetrack in terms the riders had a bit more room, and but also I liked that the dirt was quite loose and you actually needed a bit of throttle controlling for some of the
yeah,
corners, so it offered a bit of everything really. Maybe just hard to pass,
yeah. That was the
but
only
you maybe
probably issue with that track.
yeah,
Yeah,
you relied on a mistake maybe, but then there was plenty of mistakes because there was a few corners you needed good throttle control for. But yeah, overall fantastic racing, and it should be interesting. I think there's only 2 rounds left now, so
just
all to
one
play for
day
because
each.
the
Yeah,
points are so close. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
and also we should mention Sean Simpson. You got an interview with his career,
disaster.
which you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
check out on our YouTube channel. But he didn't have the best of luck in Belfast, even though he was quick. He was up at 6 o'clock. He was up at 5 o'clock in the morning for the Saturday at Aberdeen, doing practice on qualifying on his own at 6 a.m. because he had a wedding to go to. Went to the wedding, came back just before the night show, and somehow qualified for the main event despite outside gate pick. So that was really good. The next night wasn't so good. He went over the bar spectacularly in the whoops, and that was the end of per Sean Simpson. This arena cross just hasn't went that well for him despite looking quick, and it was a wee bit similar for Jack Nichols. Again, we spoke to him about his career for the YouTube channel, and he had a tough first night in Belfast, crashed out, didn't qualify. I think he qualified on the Saturday, and he was ill for the first night in Aberdeen. He was leading from the second night in his heat, and then he went down hard in the whoops and got clobbered, I think, by actually Sean Simpson in the head. So that was Jack back out again. So it hasn't always been a bed of roses for the for the older British guys. They've had it sort of tough here and there, but actually on the track in their laps, they're riding well. But racing arena cross and quick decisions, and again, I spoke to some of the riders and said everything's just happening so fast. Your brain's just so having to be so alert all the time, and it's almost trying to predict what everyone else is doing as well as concentrating your own riding. And for Nichols and Simpson, it hasn't been ideal so far, but that's the way arena cross is. We saw a couple of injuries as well. Booker, he had a big crash, broke his shoulder blade. Chris Bayless, I think it was the Friday night or Saturday night in Aberdeen. He went down with a leg injury, and he'd been riding really well too in Belfast. So there has been a bit of injury, but I think overall, especially with just the British riders, for the fans, for the British series, I think it's been a real good success so far.
Yeah, absolutely, really good. I mean, obviously they've changed it this year to have an all British Championship, and I think that is good for the industry. And obviously with the series being away for I think three years, maybe 4 years, can't quite remember if it was 2019 or 2020. But with that being away, obviously, it's helped fill out the stadium, so that's been a real positive. Belfast is sold out on the Saturday and pretty much sold out on the Friday. I mean, you're 90% sold out,
Yeah, pretty
and
much
Aberdeen
sell
look
out.
packed on Aberdeen look packed on Saturday as well, and Sunday maybe 70 or 80%. So that's really good, positive. And just on some riders, I mean, the Irish riders, James Mackerel and Jason Muir doing pretty well as well. Jason Muir especially, he was
He's a
scoring really,
final
really
every
well in
night, hasn't
Aberdeen.
he?
And yeah, I mean, those guys aren't used to this type of racing at all, and the work as well. So not easy to try and learn on the job, but that's what they're having to do effectively. So
And you can
credit to
see them
those
getting
guys.
better each
Yeah.
night. They're getting more quicker and quicker and more used to it as well. So impressive for them. And I think for all those British guys, if this series can stay consistent, it's going to be a really good tool just for races, for the crowd, for fans, for the riders, for the teams, and for the exposure, and also the technical ability of British riders coming up in the next generation. I think it's going to be really useful. So hopefully it will stay on, and we can get a British Arena Cross series that becomes as important as the British Motocross series.
Yeah, well, I think instead of maybe committing to 5 or 10 years, maybe just play it every year, how it goes, sort of thing. Because I mean, who are these next riders coming up? You know, you wouldn't want it where when Searle and Simpson retire, they don't do it. Then like, who are the top riders going to be? So
Yeah.
maybe just one to keep an eye on. But maybe for the foreseeable, yeah, it's not a bad idea. Although I have to say I do miss the French riders. But then if you get the top French riders, the likes of Searle and Muse might not do it. So
It becomes a bit
if
of
we
a
could
war
maybe get
zone.
a, yeah, exactly. If we could get a happy medium maybe in the future, it'd be quite good. But certainly not a bad move to do it this year anyway. And I think so far it's been working well. So we'll have to see how it progresses in the future. Just
Exactly. So that was it, a review of the first month of AMS Supercross and 4 British Arena Cross rounds. It's been pretty busy the last couple of weekends, but certainly some fantastic racing. And we'll be back with a review in a couple of weeks again. Andy, thanks for your time, and another few busy weeks ahead. Hawkstone into that as well, and Tampa Supercross. So a lot more racing to look forward to this season already. But the first month has sort of been and gone, and excellent racing. So enjoy the next month, and we'll speak to you again soon.
ciao.